When I first started after fellowship, I said, I'm going to do locums. I started working with a locums company. And there was at one point where I just said, look, here's my calendar. You can fill it up for me, right? And that was a big mistake, guys. I worked for a whole week, and then the last shift was on a Tuesday, and I did a 24-hour shift, and I finished Wednesday morning. And I was supposed to be at a place 2 hours away and work starting at like 1 o'clock p.m. And the locums person knew this, but you got to remember, like, their focus is how much can I get this person to work?
You opened yourself up to a vulnerability. He essentially took advantage of that.
Nobody's going to care about your money more than you, and nobody's going to care about your schedule and your working life more than you.
Yep.
Simple as that.
Exactly.
Boom. What up, everybody? This is another What Y'all Say. I'm Dr. Nee, joined by
Dr. Renee.
Listen, this is a great question that we have coming up. We're going to be talking about locums. It's funny, when we were at SNMA, I low-key caught Love. So he was Dr. Love. He's a great, he listens to our show, emergency medicine physician. Excellent guy. Does great work. He was leading the talk that we were doing on how we, make $300,000 each in different various specialties. And he was saying, Docs Outside the Box is a great place where you can learn about X, Y, and Z. They do focus a lot on locums lately. And I was like, oh, wait, I caught you on that one. What you trying to say? Right? So today's episode is going to be about locums. So guys, if you're not interested in locums, don't turn away. This stuff is actually really interesting. I'll tell you why. If you're let's say you're a pre-med student or you're a medical student,
or even an attending that's in private practice, and
you're like, I don't need to worry about that. I think it's super, just like you said, I think it's super important for you to understand, like, there's just multiple ways that you can practice. It's super important, right? If you didn't get it in med school, which you're not going to get it in med school, you're not going to get it in residency, and you're not going to get it as a pre-med, then when are you going to get it? You might as well get it while you're listening and having fun listening to us, right? So, we just going to talk and answer some questions real quick about, folks who are interested in, working as an attending, but just kind of working on their own terms, which for a lot of people is working as an independent contractor. So let's jump right into this. So Dr. Renee, you have the question. You want to read it?
Yes. So we have actually two questions from Mona. One, I think we'll start with this one because this one is a follow-up to a question that we did in a previous episode. But she says, hi, Dr. Renee. Excuse me. Hi, Dr. Nee and Renee.
Get it right. Thank you very much. Get it right. Hi. Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, Dr.
Nee and Renee. Thank you. And I hope they did your name. I hope they put Renee lowercase. Thank you.
Really, Nee?
Move on.
You're just so petty. Hi, Dr. Nee and Renee. Thank you again for the helpful insights you've been sharing. I had a follow-up question regarding the choice of state for setting up your LLC. I'm currently living and doing residency in New York City. I like the city, but as you know, taxes are pretty high. After residency, I am not tied to any particular state, though I do feel somewhat connected to New York. I was wondering, in your experience, is it worth setting up a locums-focused LLC in another state solely for the purpose of reducing taxes? Also, when you chose to set up your LLC in New Jersey, was that decision influenced by tax considerations, or were there other factors that played a more significant role? Thanks so much in advance. So that's our first question, or first group of questions. So thank you, Mona, for writing in. I'm going to actually let Dr. Nee have first stab at this one because you tended to do more of that side of setting.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you, Mona. Hopefully we got your name right. No, I didn't think about any of that stuff. And I'll be really honest with you, to this day, I still don't think about that stuff because it's a lot of work, right? So setting up a LLC, you have to you have to fill out some state paperwork. And then, once you become an entity, once your business becomes a business, then, you're going to realize that there's a lot of work that needs to be done to maintain that business, right? Whether you do it in New York City, Idaho, New Jersey, Florida, wherever it is, there's a lot of stuff that you have to do. I don't think it's stuff that is so much that you can't really, work in that fashion. And it's like prohibitive from you being able to do locums on your own. No, it's not that. It's just that you have to be on your P's and Q's and make sure that, for example, you have a system so that if, let's say, the IRS or the state federal government or the state agency wants to write you information, where's those letters going to? Right? Let's say someone wants to connect with you for any reason. Where's that information going to? Like, let's say that someone just wants to ask you some questions. Like, there's all these different things that you should start thinking about. Right. So I get it. So basically what it is I live in New York City, which is a high cost of living area. Should I, and the taxes are always high. Whenever you hear about athlete contracts, a lot of times you hear people will say, look, I don't want to play in New York because the tax is too damn high. Let me go to Texas where there's no state tax, or Florida where there's no state tax, and I can keep more of my money, blah, 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 blah. People say this all the time. Right. But we got to front and can't front, like, living in New York City is dope. Right. Like being able to get on a train, or it's just being in New York is just a different vibe. So
Yeah.
I would say this. Um, I would make sure that you figure out a way to start your business and maintain your business in the most tax efficient way, as well as the most time saving way that you can do that. Right. I don't know if, okay, if you live in New York City, but you have an LLC that's created in Delaware or in Pennsylvania or anywhere else outside of New York City, if that's going to save you in taxes. That's really a question that we should be presenting to our CPA. And I'm going to submit that to our CPA and ask what they think about that. And I'll get back to you on that. I don't know about that, but just know that if you create an LLC in another state, right? Let's say, for example, you get a locums job. You live in New York City and you get a locums job and you're working in New York City, but your company is in, let's say, Pennsylvania. Well, the fact that your company is in Pennsylvania, you're going to have to pay state taxes to Pennsylvania anyway, right?
Right.
And listen, the fact that your address, your home address is in New York, I'm assuming that if you do an LLC, you're going to want your locums company to pay your LLC, and then you're going to want your LLC to pay you. Well, guess what? When your LLC pays you, they're going to pay you according to where your address is, which is New York City. And New York City taxes are high.
Yeah.
That's just how it is. Right. So there's just a lot of ways that you can get around it. The question is do you want to deal with that? I don't know. I don't know if it's worth it. You know, so sometimes what people do is they work a little bit harder to bring in a little bit of cash so that they can live, in New York City. So that's one thing to consider. So if you want to know what we did, I started off my LLC in New Jersey, and I just started off in New Jersey because after I finished fellowship, I started working locums, and I was living with my parents, and I was helping them pay their bills and everything. And I would live, in one of the bedrooms, and then I would just be gone for like several weeks, come back home and help pay their bills and do all the things that I wanted to do. So I started an LLC in New Jersey, even though I was working in Pennsylvania, I was working in Wisconsin, I was working, where was I working? I was working in Minnesota. Remember, I was working in Minnesota,
Yeah.
Wisconsin, Idaho,
Mm-hmm.
and some other state I can't remember. But I would do like a four-state, like I had a four-state cycle. I just go around and I come back to Jersey, chill out for a week or so, or what have you, do barbecue, whatever, help dad with, all those different things that we needed to do. It was really great times. When it came time for taxes, I do have to let you know that we had to file four different tax returns with all the different states that we were at. So we still had to do all that. My lawyer, or excuse me, my CPA had to, help me manage all of those different things.
Yeah.
And that being my first year out of fellowship, that would have been really difficult for me to do by myself. So I feel really good that I had a CPA, but that's just something to consider, that it's going to be tough, to, really coordinate everything based off of where you're going to have low tax. Like, it's just hard to avoid because you live in New York, you're going to have to pay city taxes. And you're probably going to have to end up paying state taxes because you live there. And if you have your business in another state, you're going to have to pay taxes just to have your company in that state also. So my advice is just talk to we'll see if we can
talk to a
find
CPA.
a
We'll
CPA
see if we
about that.
can. Yeah, the other thing I was going to say is, just keeping up with what is going on in that state, right? Because you don't live there. So now you have to keep tabs on what's going on in that state. Just because it doesn't have, income tax now, and chances are that it will, that the states that don't have income tax now will continue in that vein. But if they don't, you know, are you keeping up with the goings on in that particular state? So just using, just using that state, whichever state that you decide, because it doesn't have income tax, may not necessarily be enough, right? You may need to know a little bit more about what's going on and just how you potentially might be affected, which becomes difficult because you live in one state and now you're like, are you really going to keep tabs? So I think that's really important because not all states obviously are created equal. That's the only
Yeah.
thing that I would add there.
And I mean, the other thing is, well, should you consider just moving, right? I don't know, man. Like for me, I think that's the whole point, of once you become like you've been doing that for med school and you did that probably for residency, right? You had to go someplace to go fit in. Got into a med school, you decided to go there, you had to move. It may not have been in the area that you wanted to be. Residency, I'm not sure. Well, I guess your residency is in New York, possibly.
Mhm.
But for me, it's like once you become an attending, just choose the place that you want to live. That's what I would do. Unless it's some type of extenuating circumstances. Now, for us, we didn't live where we wanted to live initially. We lived in central Pennsylvania because we had almost, $700,000 in student loan debt. So we knew living in New Jersey or living in New York, like a significant portion of our money was going to go towards paying off, going towards housing
Living expenses,
and living
basically.
expenses.
Yeah.
And to be honest with you, we didn't even want to work in New York. I didn't want to work in
Yeah, I didn't
Jersey,
want to work I still don't want to work in New York. I'm like,
you know, you know what I'm saying? So we just said, look, we
You
found this
say,
spot. It was good. And it was like, yeah, let's make it work.
being a patient in a New York City hospital has made me not want to be a doctor in a New York City hospital.
Yeah.
But yeah, but thank you for submitting that question, Mona. I hope, the answer was at least somewhat helpful. At the very least, I would say go and talk with a CPA, see if it's worth it. Talk with other people maybe who are doing, what you're considering doing and see how it's working for them. But I wouldn't just make that decision just kind of based on this one notion that, well, these particular states don't have taxes, so therefore I'm going to do that, right? Because there's never just kind of a one reason to do something, right? You want to weigh your pros and cons. So that's what I would do.
And I would say, Mona, like the best way to get around this at this point right now is, like instead of like focusing, like I said, you still got to talk to a CPA. They can give you the best advice, or a tax lawyer. They can give you the best advice. But I think from our standpoint, I think the best advice right now is, don't worry about chasing the tax friendly states. Like focus on things like maximizing business deductions, right, with your LLC, making sure that, in your apartment, is there a spot that's deliberately that's going to be there for doing your business, right? Doing notes, billing the hospital, taking phone calls for your work, right? You need a home office because you can get a rather nice deduction, which decreases your
Mhm.
tax burden by having a home office, right?
Yep.
And that's based off of the square footage of your house. That's something to consider. Make sure that you get like a retirement plan, right? I'm talking about a SEP IRA or even a solo 401k. We've talked about that on plenty of episodes, right? That also reduces your taxable income and you want to try to maximize that, right?
Right.
Then
Your
what
health
else? You could,
insurance.
oh yeah, health insurance. Like those are things that you can do to really like control that you know of to really decrease your your
Your
tax
tax
burden. And then
burden.
I think hiring a CPA is always like hiring an expert to walk you through this process, who can teach you through this process is super important. Very,
Yeah.
very important.
Yeah.
Wish you luck. Wish you luck, Mona. Great
Good luck,
question.
Mona. All right. So our next question is from Mona again. And we are going to be talking about whether or not she should share her CV with the Locums company, at which point she should do it. So make sure you guys move on to the next segment of the podcast so that we can answer that question.
What's good, everyone? This is Dr. Nee. Yo, this is the end of this segment. I appreciate you for listening, but this ain't the end. If you want more, go ahead and click the next button on your favorite podcast app. Listen, that's next for more banter between me and Dr. Renee. That's next for more topics. That's next for more segments. Listen, did you hit next yet? Go ahead and click next. Hit it. Next. Peace.